We're ordinarily heard each Wednesday here on the new WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina. But this show is on, what is it? It's Monday, is it?
It
Monday?
is.
Can you hear me? You guys can hear me?
I can.
And okay, well, we'll figure that out in a second, Katie. But you can also listen online at www.pvmfm.org. You can also watch on WPVM's Facebook page. And you guys can say hello to all your friends and fans on Facebook.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, people that are on the Facebook.
Okay, great. And if you can't hear Katie, that's okay.
I'm here.
We're
It's
here.
different.
Okay, super. And it's my pleasure to introduce two of my favorite local performers who are going to be talking about a show that they're going to be in the near future. And they are Katie Langwell and Scott Fisher. And let me see if I get it right. I believe you're Scott?
That's
Okay,
me.
and you're
What?
Katie?
Yes.
Good
this
guess.
Is true.
And I guess since I don't have a formally approved bio of you, can I actually maybe just give the Reader's Digest version, Katie, of how you got involved in theater?
Let's see. Well, I was always interested in it and coming up with little shows to do in Richmond, Virginia with my cousins. I think my breakout role was as all the male characters in our production of Hello, Dolly, which was a cast of 4. And we performed at a reunion. I
How old
think.
were you?
I think I was 8. It was
Now-
pretty good.
The question, do they have a video of that?
No.
Oh,
No.
bummer.
I know.
But
I
you know, the idea I told you off the air, though, what we should do, Scott, I want you to keep this in mind, is we should remount that show and play it in Nashville. What do you think?
I think that would be amazing.
Okay.
Amazing.
Especially since nobody taped it. What
Nobody-
a bummer.
I know. It was a while ago, but
So that was at 8 years old.
I think, yes.
Did you just continue in theater?
Oh, yeah, just nonstop after that. No, I continued a little bit in high school and then in college, majored in French and theater, and then was in New York City for a while, about a decade, doing theater, and had a little theater company up there, and then moved to Asheville and still doing some now and again.
And what's really cool about this, so you do this, but in addition, you have another gig you have on the side a little bit? And-
Yeah, a little gig, my day job. My day job is I'm a teacher at Hanger Hall School for Girls.
And how long you been doing that?
I have been doing that for about 12 years, I guess.
Wow.
Well, and what's really, I think, great about it is that one of the tough things about Asheville, of course, is that it's great to be an actor, great to live in Asheville, but unless you have another something,
Right.
it's kind of hard to survive
Indeed.
a little bit. And Scott, same thing too, I'll ask you that you grew up where?
I grew up in Texas.
Okay, and when you were a Texas little kid, did you always know you wanted to be an actor?
I don't know that I always knew I wanted to be an actor. I always was sort of the attention-seeking class clown,
You?
kind of.
That's a
yeah,
shock.
right.
Oh,
That's
I
me.
find that hard to believe.
And when I was in high school, my older sister was in theater, and I wanted to do everything that she did, so I got into theater as well. And then I went off to college and majored in theater and got a degree in theater, so I waited tables for a couple of years after that, because that's what you do. And then I somehow ended up in Asheville, like Katie, and have been doing community theater ever since.
And also, ironically, you're also a teacher as well?
Also, I'm a teacher as well, that's true. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Isaac Dixon Elementary here in Asheville.
And how long have you been doing that?
Oh, I've been teaching, I think, 7 or 8 years.
Okay. And so, in terms of the acting thing, I've been blessed to have seen both of you, I guess, in several productions. And I guess, why don't you talk a little bit about it? I know you two are part of a troupe, is that correct?
Right.
And what's the name of the troupe?
Well, we're members of the How-To Crew, and we are called the How-To Crew because all of our shows have sort of a how-to theme to them. Do you want to run through the titles for us, Katie?
Sure. I think the first one we did was sex and how to have it.
And I was there.
You know.
Okay.
And then
boy,
we
did I
did-
learn. Thank you.
We all learned a lot after that show. Then we did food was next, food and how to eat it.
That was the next one.
And then we did beer and how to drink it.
Of course, very Asheville.
Yes. And then our last one was money and how to make it.
Okay. And then we have one coming up, is that correct?
Right. On Thursday, we'll be opening our latest show, Rules and How to Break Them.
Okay, and where's that going to open up?
It's going to be at the BB Theater in downtown Asheville on 20 Commerce Street, I believe is the address.
But people better see it soon because it's only a 2-week run.
Yeah, it's a 2-week run. It's a limited engagement, and I believe our director, Steve Samuels, said that maybe half of the tickets for the run are already sold. Tickets
Really?
are going fast,
Ooh.
yeah, so people should really get on that.
Well, especially if you want to see it and you only have 2 weeks as opposed to 4 weeks to
Right.
see it. And BB
Correct.
Theater does have a
pretty
lot
small.
of seats too. Talk about the concept, though, like the how-to. Who came up with that initially?
I didn't join the troupe until food and how to eat it. So, Katie, since you were there for that sex show, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, basically for all of the shows, Steve comes up with the overarching, title.
Word,
or, you
the
know,
one word.
The word, right, the word. And then we kind of, just start coming up with ideas for sketches, and we bounce them around each other, and, I'll write a sketch and hand it off to Scott, and he'll make it better, and, it'll get passed around to someone else. And so it's really, it's a wonderfully collaborative experience.
Yeah, I agree.
The shame of it, though, that if you miss it in these 2 weeks, that's it, though. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it's gone. That's right.
It's not coming on HBO or
Not-
Netflix.
No, not unless anybody wants to show up and produce us.
Well, we'll invite them to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too. Have you had a favorite one you've done so far?
Oh man, that's really tough.
I think I liked either food or beer.
Yeah,
Those have been my two favorites.
I think food was probably my favorite, just because it was really we tried to make our shows very fitting to Asheville. I mean, we're an Asheville theater troupe, and Asheville being known for its fancy foodies and whatnot, there was a lot of material there. So that might have been my favorite too.
But it seems, too, I guess there are more to come, I assume, after this one. Do we have any in the future that you can share?
I don't know. I mean, can you think of any? Do you have any great
Yeah, give
ideas?
us
What's
some.
one word that we can write a show
Radio.
about?
Radio.
And what's the verb? And how to
How to
Play
be on
it.
radio.
Be on the
Whatever.
radio.
Or how to have a radio show.
Have a radio
We'll
show.
have you guys, thank you, what a great idea for the next show. So the thing that also impressed me, frankly, about both of you, aside from having full-time gigs, relationships, the whole 9 yards, you're also, at the same time, too, you're in other shows from time to time as well. I know, I'll turn to Scott, because I was privileged to see your last show, and that was the show you just came out of. What show was that again?
So that was it was a double pairing of two one-acts. The first one was Crapp's Last Tape by Samuel Beckett, and the second one that I was in was Zoo's Story by Edward Albee, and that was another Sublime Theater production, and could not have been more different than this one. I mean, the sketch comedy is very, very funny and very light and very easy, and this was very intense and very dramatic and very difficult.
And she said, I think I've seen you in a lot of sketch comedy.
Mhm.
Maybe that was such a pleasant surprise. I don't think I'd ever seen you in something almost serious.
Right. No, Zoo Story was, I mean, I'm very proud of the work that we did on that show. It was directed by Henry Williamson. It's the hardest thing that I've ever done, and it's some of the most proud I've ever been of any work that I've put on the stage. It was really something.
And you should be proud, because I think I told you off the air that right now I'm in a hands-on hard body. And for me to memorize 5 lines, it's killing me,
Yeah.
Katie. I've never done it.
Yeah.
You had to memorize a lot
I
of
had
stuff.
there's about a 20-minute monologue I had in the middle of that show that was something else.
And you told me off the air, too, that not only did you have to do the monologue, but you had to get the commas and the semicolons and everything.
Absolutely. Well, the way Albee writes, I mean, he considered that script to be a score. And so not only was the word choice very specific, but the punctuation choice. Like when he used a comma as opposed to a semicolon, it's because he wanted a comma and not a semicolon. So when I memorized it, I had to be extremely meticulous by just to honor the source material.
Do you ever work with your students in terms of acting, or do they ever put on anything?
I do. I work with small children, and so a lot of the stuff that I do with them theatrically is more, I would say, more process over product. I'm less interested in putting on a show for moms and dads, and more interested in, we do a lot of theater games and creative drama and story drama, just because I think it's a lot of fun.
And they probably enjoy it, too,
Oh,
though.
they love it. They love it.
Katie, the same question, too. I've seen you, I know, in the how-to shows. What else have I seen you in?
The most recent thing I did was Silent Sky, which
So
was
good.
at
I told you,
in me-
knocked my socks off, though.
Mhm.
it
Because
was
who
beautiful.
would have thought, that a show is about, for the benefit of the audience, who's it about?
Oh, it was about Henrietta Leavitt and the amazing contributions she made with astronomy, and just the work that she did basically allowed future people to measure the universe. And she was a woman, and people didn't know about her really.
Where I told my wife, well, let's go see a show about astronomy.
Yeah,
She said-
right.
She said, you got to be kidding me. But boy, did I love that.
It was
And
great.
what was so great about it, Scott, too, is that I saw you in a light I'd never seen you before.
Yeah, me
You
too,
know,
yeah.
no, I'm saying you always play these light comic roles,
Right.
And this was just
It was-
such a beautiful role.
Yeah, it was a lovely role, and it was a challenge for me because sort of my comfort blanket is the banana peel and the rubber nose,
Right.
and this was a much more severe role, and so it was tough, but it was great. It was a great challenge.
So
for
we were
me.
both of us going from very dramatic,
Isn't that
serious
interesting?
pieces in the
True.
spring to summertime, where it's
Summertime.
let's do some sketch comedy.
Lighter than helium. Yes.
Had you done other serious stuff? I guess, Katie, both of you, in terms of you've been theater majors, I guess you've done lots of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in Asheville area, had you done other stuff of a serious nature?
I think not very much for me. I did A Doll's House with North Carolina Stage Company, but I mean that was years ago,
Right.
in a small role. And everything else has been comedy.
Yeah, I've done a couple of serious pieces, but I tend to skew a little more towards the comedic. It's just more fun and it's easier.
And the same question I'll ask Katie, that in terms of your school thing,
Mm-hmm.
do you do any, are you involved in the drama program there at all?
Yeah, I am a French and drama teacher. So,
Drama teacher also.
So, and we do a fall play every year that usually I don't want to say I write it because I don't, so I won't say that. But I usually take something and I adapt it because usually the school is about 72 students, and most years almost every girl wants to be in the show. And so I'd prefer not to do something like The Wizard of Oz or Annie or The Sound of Music. I prefer to let the girls sort of find their own creativity. So I will usually take something like a series of Greek myths and craft that into something, or fairy tales, or Aesop's fables, and then that way I can kind of get to know the girls as we're rehearsing. And if I see someone is doing something really good, then I'll kind of beef up her part. And so it's great for me.
Or we could always combine the French and Les Miserables. We could do,
Absolutely, I think that would be a big hit.
A whole school full of Cosettes. Sort of.
Right.
Oh, by the way, do me a favor, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
4 to 6 weeks before, get in touch with me. Let's do a show on that as well, the fall
Oh.
show. Plus, we'll have some of the students involved on it
Oh,
as
my
well. Come
goodness.
on, wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, they
You know?
would be
But
over the moon. Yeah.
That'd really be cool if we could do. So, do you have the same thing moving forward? So we have the fall play coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned off the air you're also going to be working on something.
Yes, in some fashion. I'm usually involved in the 48-hour film festival, where I'm with Team UNCA, and we've been doing it off and on for over 10 years. So the thing with the 48 is that you get all of the elements Friday night at 7, and then you start writing. You write all night, and then you shoot all day Saturday, and then it goes into post Saturday after you're done, and then you turn it in Sunday. So it is 48 hours, and I'm usually part of the writing team. And then if I write myself a part, then I'll be on the acting team.
And how long are the films?
Oh, there's 7 minutes.
Oh, 7 minutes?
Yes, 7 minutes. So it's usually this coming weekend. If you're out and about in Nashville, you'll see little groups of people running around like crazy shooting, and it's just a lot of fun because it's a chance to be creative, but it's such a finite amount of time. So it's like you work really, really hard, and then it's done, and then you have a little 7-minute film in the can.
And Scott, the same question. I don't know if you know anything yet, aside from the upcoming show. You have anything in the works?
No, I don't have anything else on hand right now. I just kind of tend to go where the wind takes me. Teaching keeps me pretty busy, and being a dad keeps me pretty busy, so I don't have huge mountains of free time available to me. So people will just come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm doing a show. Can you do it?" And I'll check my schedule and say, "Oh, I'm free that weekend. Sure."
Do you want to be in the 48?
No, thank you.
We had a position
I'll be doing a
for you.
sketch comedy show at the time.
I will too.
Oh, the same weekend?
Yes.
Okay, just
Yep.
a little bit busy. Let's fast forward then to this coming weekend.
Yes, please.
It's this Thursday. It
Yeah.
opens too. So talk a little bit more about what people are going to see
Wow. Okay.
without giving everything away. But
No
just
spoilers.
a spoiler alert.
So if you have never seen a how-to show before, you are in for a wild ride of a bunch of sketches that are all loosely related to this one theme of rules and how to break them. And a couple of things that we're known for as a troupe is that you're familiar with the comedic term of callbacks, where you make a joke and later on you reference that joke. we have a lot of callbacks, but we also have a lot of call forwards where we reference jokes that we haven't made yet, and call sidewayses.
Well, it leaves the audience going, huh, what is this?
But it pays off in the end.
Absolutely. Another thing we do is, even though none of us are really musical theater people,
Speak for yourself.
well, I mean, I like to think that I am, but the reality is we always have a couple of big Broadway numbers in there.
Definitely. Lots of singing and dancing and jazz hands.
Yeah.
And with a big orchestra behind you also. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Absolutely a big orchestra.
How do you handle music? It's piped in?
Most of our songs are song parodies, so we can find the backing tracks for them and adjust them to suit our needs.
Because that's one of the fun things, or I can just see you, and then we'll talk a little bit about the rest of the cast too. But I know one person in particular is absolutely great on this, and so we just talked about him. Talk about the rest of the cast.
So there are 6 members total in the company. Katie and I are 2 of the actors, and the other 2 actors are the fabulously talented Glenn Reed and man, what's that new one? What's her name?
I think her name is Emily, but I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, whoever she is.
Yeah.
She's the other one. And then rounding out the company are Steve Samuels, our director, and his wife Lisa Yaffe, who is sort of the head writer. And the 6 of us work together and put a show up.
Describe the whole writing process. In other words, I don't know if I've ever written anything with 6 people. I have enough trouble writing with one
Yep.
person. Is that good? Is that fun or is it challenging?
I think yes, both. I think for me, I'll kind of like rack my head and a funny idea will come to me, and you just have to sit down and spit it out there, get it out there, and then once I feel like, all right, I'm feeling brave enough to share this with a group, and usually what I do is I share mine with Lisa first, because she's my little.
What?
I know, right? And then if she says, okay, it's funny, I'll mess around with it and make it funnier, then share it with a group, and then the group kind of like, okay, this is good, or sometimes this is
Not so
this is
good.
not so good. And I think that's the thing that I've had to learn is just like it's you got to have thick skin and
Yeah.
be willing to throw away your babies.
Do you share your stuff with your husband?
Oh yes, yes, I do. And
Before you share it with others?
Oh yeah. He's a I don't know if he's a willing listener, but he's there, and I make sure I'm like, if he's laughing, that's a good sign.
Do you run lines with him too?
Yes, I do, and my 2 kids.
How old are your kids?
My eldest just graduated high school, 18, and my youngest is 16. So.
So now they can listen to some of that.
Yes, yeah, they're okay. I know. There was a time when I was like, I don't think they should hear
Right.
this, but very
Are they
helpful.
going to come see this show?
They are. They're coming Friday night.
interesting.
Yes.
Well, that's cool. Some performers will tell me, that they're in a show, but they can't have their children, see it, or it's not appropriate.
Right.
So
Depends
this,
on the show.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about this show. What would you say? Is there an age limit you would say for this show?
I would say the show is definitely not for children.
Right.
I would say it's 100% definitely
Yeah.
not for children.
Not for children.
And same thing too, Scott. So when you have an idea, even before you bounce it off on the troupe, do you bounce it off on Kirby or do you bounce it off on other people?
I do, or I will ask Kirby if I'm...
And by the way, we should mention Kirby, if you're watching or listening.
Kirby's my darling girlfriend.
And Kirby Gibson,
Kirby Gibson, the love of my life.
very talented, good, got that in. And so you'll get her reaction on it?
Yeah, because sometimes I'm not sure if something is really funny. Like, I think it's funny, but I'm not sure. So I'll start to sketch it out, and then I'll call her or I'll forward her a script and say, will you read this and tell me if there's anything here or not? And then if I get her approval, then I'll let Katie and Lisa read it after it's past the Kirby.
And same thing too, do you ever run lines with her?
Not that much. She lives in Chicago, and so that makes it a little difficult. She is coming to see the show, and so I don't really want to spoil it, although she's read the scripts that I wrote, so she's seen some of it already, but I kind of like to keep it, part of it a surprise,
Even though, other than this show, I guess you could run lines with somebody from on phone or something like that,
That's
and
true.
just get their reaction to it.
I guess you could.
But what you said is kind of interesting. I'd like to get Katie's reaction to it as well, is that my ex had like no sense of humor, and she'd admit it, And so if she would laugh, I knew that was the
Right.
best,
Mhm.
But if people don't laugh, it gives
Right.
you some feedback.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Well,
definite feedback.
Well, let me ask about both your husband and Kirby as well. Are they honest with you in terms of if they don't like something, will they tell you?
Painfully.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Kirby will. And for me, it's not so much the comedy aspect because it's actually very easy to make Kirby laugh, but several of the things in the show that I write, I'm just not sure if it will make sense. Does that make? We do a lot of it's like meta sketch comedy where some of the sketches are about us as a troupe writing sketch comedy, and so I'll say, Kirby, read this and tell me if like will the audience get this at all? Does it make any sense? There are a few scenes. If you see a scene in the show and you're wondering where it came from, it probably came from my twisted brain.
Because one of the problems with me seeing the two of you on stage is and I admit it, I'm the world's worst critic. Because if I know somebody, I'm going to love it. You
Sure.
know,
That
just
makes you the best critic.
well, it is. But you know, people say what they think about the show, and I always say, you know, I love it. Especially if I see Scott doing his comic thing or you doing your comic thing, even though that other one just knocked my socks off about the astronomer. But, you know, if I know somebody, I'm going to like it.
Sure.
You know, and no matter what it is, and they say maybe it's best critic for you guys, but for anybody else, it's like we'll also talk about, you know, Bobby Angel, of course. Everybody knows Bobby.
Sure.
You know, she's the best person to have in an audience.
She has a great laugh.
The best laugh, you know. So if she's there, you're going to at least get laughs.
Yeah,
you
and
know.
I tell her to, when Barbie comes, to sit in the back if she can, so that her laugh will hit the other audience members in the back of their heads and
Nice.
make laugh coming out of their mouth. I mean, that's
No,
how laugh
great
works.
idea because she usually sits up front,
Mhm.
but that's a really good idea to get them in the back.
Right.
What do you have if you have an audience that isn't getting it? You know,
Well, one of the interesting things about our show is that it's definitely a variety show. If you don't like one
Good point.
thing and you wait 60 seconds, you're going to see something
That's true.
completely different. So that's helpful.
Right.
well, also the skits are relatively short. How long do they typically run?
That's a great question. I think the longest one might be 5 minutes.
I think so. I think the shortest one is probably 20
Less than a minute,
seconds.
yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of skits you're putting
Mhm.
in a short period of time, and especially we'll talk about your director. So Steve Samuels, what's it like working with Steve Samuels as your director?
Oh, boy.
Well, it's interesting too. Once he comes up with a theme, like he came up with rules on how to break them, then he leaves, and he's not part of it
Oh, that's
until we
cool.
have a script.
Oh,
he
so
doesn't.
he doesn't do too much of the writing.
He helps make it cohesive. He kind of helps turn a bunch of individual scenes into a show. That's what he does. But for the writing process, he stays out of it. In fact, we'll go meet at his house and send him down to the basement or something so that Lisa and Katie and I can sit around a table and read through scripts together without him listening to them until we feel like they're ready.
Now, has he been in any of the productions?
I think he made a strange appearance in one of them.
Did he?
Oh, no. I think that was in the first one that you weren't in.
I wasn't in that one.
remember him. I don't know. He was on stage at some point, but officially, no.
He records our voiceovers.
If he
Oh,
does,
that's right.
yes.
Every
yes,
time,
he
yeah,
does.
you'll
he
hear
does
that.
voiceovers.
Yeah, so that even in almost every show I'll see this. When you're doing the show, let's talk about people actually coming to see it, which we'd like them to come.
We
would
would.
love
and,
them to
and
come.
they have to, like you said, and so everybody always says that, you know, buy tickets now. We have limited number of tickets. But the BB Theater, it's really true,
It
though.
is a small venue.
Why so? I mean, there are only, how many seats ballpark?
Maybe
you know?
42 or 40, fewer than 50 seats in the audience.
Right. And also, is this a part of Stephen's new company?
Yes, it is
So
part
to-
of the Sublime Theater, so
Right.
you can Google Sublime Theater Asheville to find more information. And it's their third production,
I
perhaps?
think
so,
so.
yeah. And talk a little bit about that, or he did also the one you mentioned, the Zoo Story.
Right. The
He
Zoo
did
Story is
that.
also a Sublime
And
production.
talking, what I like about Steve's stuff, taking over the tradition, which he'd always done since in Asheville, is almost, his stuff is always new or original, you know? Because the first one helped me with it was kind of strange,
TRNZ.
right, yeah.
Right, right.
And that was kind of out there a little
It
bit.
was.
But in a good way.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, I could understand it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, John Crutchfield wrote that
Right.
one, right?
Yeah.
I really loved that one.
Yeah, it really was
Mm-hmm.
kind of interesting. But so almost everything you see that Steve's involved, it's going to be something new or unusual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely very focused on local work and local artists. So local playwrights, local actors, making it very much about Asheville, which I think is going to be one of the success points for Sublime Theater.
Yet one of the things Steve did, and I thought it was great, where he put on a classic show. It was What was it? It
Was
was
it
Arthur Miller.
Death of a Salesman.
Yeah, and boy, I love that.
I did too.
And it just knocked my socks off also that
Yeah.
I had no expectation of that.
Yeah.
And he usually does new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to do tradition, and then also to watch him act is quite an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't act enough. You know, I think he's
Right.
a very, very talented actor. Either of you do any directing?
I mean, only with my school, with my middle school, I direct, and I directed a little bit of sketch comedy in New York, but since being down here, no.
Would you ever want to?
Yes, I would, actually. I think that would be really interesting now that I've done it a little bit, and now that I realize when I have directed the girls in plays at my school, how fascinating it is for a director, because it's really fun, because you have so much freedom to do kind of whatever you want, and you the one who's directing, you can sort of mold the show
Yeah,
as
it's your
you.
vision.
Yeah.
I also would like to. If there's anybody out there looking for directors, Katie and Scott
We
are
are
available.
free.
A
Yeah.
duo. Well, it's funny because most directors will tell me that they prefer now directing to acting,
Mm-hmm.
but in part maybe because of they don't have to memorize lines, you know. So in this play, you have a bunch of lines you have to memorize or
Mm-hmm.
the skits, but I guess can you get away a little bit if you blow a line or whatnot?
Oh, absolutely.
Is some improv going on?
Yeah, we're either very well prepared improv or we're very poorly rehearsed sketch comedy, somewhere in that range.
So I guess it gives you a little bit more flexibility if you see it. If you miss a line,
Right. There's
Which Steve is also always encouraging us to play around.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah,
Oh,
he
yeah.
definitely says if
Oh,
you
yeah.
think of something funnier, then please do it, and he'll just let us know whether it works or
Right.
not.
Well, but I do think one of the problems is if somebody on stage comes up with a funnier line that you have never heard before, there's a tendency to, Tim Conway it, or just.
Yes.
well, you told a story, Katie. Once years ago, I saw her play same kind of concept about Alzheimer's, and it was a great play, but the woman playing the lead role didn't memorize her lines. And so I thought it was great, but everybody else in the cast was ready to kill her because she didn't know her lines.
Right,
You know,
I
so
was
you
messing that up.
you didn't know when to come in.
Right.
I guess in a sketch comedy, you at least have a sense of what's going to happen next or something.
Right, we do. We do know the order, and we do know those cue lines that are very important to get right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely some wiggle room in the rest of it for
Or
playing around.
I guess if you were angry with Katie, though, you could really, screw her up and,
yeah.
I did, I did make Katie angry one time. I don't know if you remember this or not.
No.
We did a show, and I think you stammered over one of your lines, and I just jumped in with, "That's easy for you to say." And,
I can see him doing that.
I can
and
see
you kind of got a little upset with me
Really?
yeah, sorry.
It's okay. I forgive you openly in front of
Aw.
everyone.
Thanks.
I don't really remember that, but that's.
So if folks want to find out more about this show, best bet is to do what?
Rules.brownpapertickets.com. That'll get you tickets and get you more information. Or you can just Google the Sublime Theater, Asheville.
Okay, now I have all the information.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it runs starting this Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
It runs just no show on Sunday, just Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
That's right, 2 weekends only from June 20th through the 29th.
That's funny. I've discussed this with Steve in the past too, and different theaters are changing. You're feeling about a Thursday night versus a Sunday matinee. If you notice, Katie, more and more theaters now are starting to have Sunday matinees
Yeah.
here,
Mm-hmm.
less and less. How do you feel about Thursday night versus Sunday?
Well, it's funny. I have two different feelings about that. As an actor, I much prefer a Thursday night. I don't really enjoy doing matinees just because it feels wrong to leave the theater and have it be late outside.
Right.
However, as an audience member, I love to see matinees. So that's where I stand.
And it's funny, I was the one who always asked for matinees. Yet Thursday nights I love because I can get out and see a show. My wife is not the theater buff I am. But Sundays, it's good to see shows then too. So you certainly have a lot of choices in Asheville. I'd like to thank both Scott Fisher and Katie Langwell for being my guests this first half hour on this special edition of the Blainsville Show. Get out to the show to see it starting Thursday night. Again, what's the website, Scott?
Rules.brownpapertickets.com.
Where the other one is...
You can just Google the Sublime Theater, Asheville.
Yeah. and you can also find it on social media, excepting Scott won't see it.
I'm not on social media. I'm sorry.
But Scott's mom will, so you can
Hi,
wave
Mom.
to your mom
Hi,
as well.
Scott's mom.
And thanks, guys. I hope you have a great run with it.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Blaine.
Thanks a lot for coming by.
Thanks.
Okay, and kick them out. I'm going to bring in my second guest. But before we do, I'd like to mention two things. The support for the show and WPVM is underwritten by the Grail Movie House, Asheville's alternative cinema. The Grail Movie House is an independent, locally owned three-screen cinema located in downtown Asheville. For current features, visit the Grail website at grailmoviehouse.com or the Grail's social media pages. In addition, I'd also like to mention two upcoming shows in the area. And one is The Odd Couple begins at SAWT in Mars Hill, June 20th to the 30th. And you can get information about that at sawtplays.com. In addition, there's another show that's currently running, Hands on a Hard Body, continues at Asheville Community Theater through June 30th. You get information on that at ashevilletheater.org. And if you don't blink, you'll even get to see me in that play. I have a cameo appearance, and hopefully you'll come out to Asheville Community Theater. It's next my pleasure to introduce my second guest on Blaine's Auto Show today, and he is Stephen Shulman, kind of a longtime friend and quite an interesting guy, as you'll see about in a second. But welcome aboard, Steve. Stephen.
Thank you, Blaine.
Okay, and you can just put the headset on there, and as you're doing that,
Which is
you
left.
can just put it on, it'll fit right over your head. Okay, and maybe turn off your phone if that's your phone, it'll be all set. And Stephen, as you're getting set up also, you can wave to many fans and friends out in Facebook Liveville. Steve, they're all looking at you as you're playing with your phone. Just give a wave out there, and they're all looking at you, and you see Stephen Shulman. And Stephen I've known ever since he's been in the Asheville area, and he kind of commutes back from Asheville in Florida. But I've gotten to know Steve as he breaks the place up. As an author, wrote a really fascinating biography or autobiography, or he calls it a memoir, called My Uncle Gloria. And I'll just hold it up for the viewing audience. But, Stephen, the question I have is, how did you come up with the idea to write a memoir about your Uncle Gloria?
Quite simple. Back in about 1999, I get a phone call from my sister, Susan. And she says to me, Stephen, I got something to talk to you about. What is it? And she says, it's urgent. I need you to come over right away. I can't tell you on the phone. I'm too upset about it. And I was really upset with her. And I said, Susan, look, I have a date with my friend Gloria, my friend Valerie, who at the time was the girl I was dating, a lovely lady. And I said, it's, whatever it is, it can wait. Because, my sister was a drama queen, and I knew that who knows what was going to happen. Anyway, she says, please, please, please come over. It's really important. I need to see you now. Anyway, so I unfortunately broke my date, but I told Valerie I'd make it up to her later. And, of course, she encouraged me to go over because she has family and a bunch of sisters and brothers. So she said, go ahead. We can get together later. So I get over there, and she says, sit down. I want to talk to you about something. All right, what is it, Susan? And she says, Uncle Butch is gone. I said, what? She says, Uncle Butch. Now, Uncle Butch is my mother's brother, okay? And he was a guy that I hated. And for the last 35 years of my life, this is starting in like 1999. So about last 35 years of my life, I hated him, and every day I prayed that he would die because he never was there for me. He would abandon me. I needed a father figure, and I didn't have a father, and it's a whole nother story, and I needed him to help me with things in life growing up as an adolescent. He was never there for me. So I just wished him off and wished he would die, and maybe in death he'll make up for all the stuff he didn't do. So I get the phone call.
And so the phone call, all of a sudden, then you think you finally get your wish that your uncle is no longer going to be in your life.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. So I said to Susan, when's the reading of the will? And she said, well, there is no will. I said, what do you mean? She says, well, we have an Aunt Gloria. And I said, huh? You mean he married a third wife and she's gotten the inheritance of all the antique cars, the junk car collection and everything? And she said, no. And then she said, sit down, I need to talk to you. And that's how it started. And then she basically told me the story of what he's doing to himself and his body at age 66. This heterosexual, macho, bald-headed, homophobic, racist, bigoted, junkyard dog owner.
And what did he do?
He woke up one day and said to himself, he was in love with himself, very narcissistic. And he woke up one day and he said to me, Stephen, I love women so much. There's nothing more beautiful in life than a woman. Why don't I just go and become one? So he set out to become a woman and have a sex change. And that was it. And when I heard this, I thought it was a joke. And 'cause it was like 1999, and I didn't know anything about transgender people, and I was sick. I mean, I was revolted. I was like nauseated. I wanted to throw up, and I wanted to run the hell out of there and just go back home and just take a shower. And because the thought of what does this ugly-looking guy look like as a woman? And then what happened to me in my mind, I said, is this congenital or hereditary? Could this be something that I would want to do? Because we have the same gene pool, when I'm his age. And she said, I don't know, but you'll have a chance to ask her and her therapist at a meeting that she's having in a couple of days, a support group. And so that's basically how it started.
And by the way, again, I've seen pictures of Gloria when he was a guy. I've seen pictures as a woman, but I think looks better as a woman than did as a guy.
Oh, yeah, and much nicer. Oh,
Really?
my
There
God.
was a change then in the personality too?
Oh, 1,000%. He was a nasty, like I said, homophobic, racist, bigoted, junkyard owner, homophobic, and as a woman, he was very nice and sweet and polite and glamorous. Just think of what Marilyn Monroe looks like. That's who his idol was.
Now, what gave you the idea to then take his story and write a book about it?
Very simple, because I realized he's not dead. So being in the insurance business that I've been in for the last 20, 30 years, I can't collect on a life insurance policy because he's not dead. And so there's no junkyard to inherit or no antique car collection. So I figured, well, my entrepreneurial mind, well, why don't I write a book and put it in the autobiography section of Barnes & Noble's about a 66-year-old man waking up and having an epiphany, well, I'm going to cut off my genitals and become a woman. I thought maybe that would sell. And so that was it.
And what I think is incredible about the whole story is that in your life you had never been a writer. Is that correct?
No, I didn't write anything.
So
Nothing.
describe that process then.
Well, I didn't know where to begin or what to write. So what I did was the first thing I had to do, I had to get permission from him to tell him what I wanted to do. And it was a little difficult. And it was very upsetting to me because I said to him, we didn't speak. And like I said, I hated him and wanted him to die, resented him. And so I asked him, I said, look, I want to write a story about what you did. He said, great, whatever you want. Anything I can make it up to you for all these years that I abandoned you and you were not there. I was not there for you, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay. So I asked him, I said, would you sign a waiver giving me full authorization and, contract giving me, complete rights, intellectual property rights for your story through all media? Because if I'm going to do this, I wanted it for TV, radio, theater, everything. So he said, sure, anything I can do to make you happy, with one requirement that I want from you in return. And I said, well, before you ask me that, I want to make sure that when I interview you, you tell me everything truthful. He says, I'll be 100% truthful.
By the way, do you think that was the case?
Yes, The only thing he told me he wouldn't answer, wouldn't tell me, and I didn't care, was the names of the women that he was having, all this extracurricular activities with, lesbian women. I didn't want to know their last names. I could care less. But he had the request of what was it that I hated him so much that I didn't want him to be any part of my life for so many years. And that was the only thing. So I agreed to ask him the questions. And that meeting we had at his double wide where he was living, because he was broke at the time, which is a whole nother story. He's going through a divorce, was very cathartic to us. It turned out that my mother's propaganda, and I said a mother's brother, polluted my head with bad thoughts of my uncle. That he was no good, dishonest, blah, blah, blah. So that's how I started to write.
In writing the book, did your thoughts about your uncle change at all?
Excuse me?
Did your thoughts change at all in writing
Oh,
the book?
the moment he answered the questions, absolutely. Because every question I asked him made perfectly good sense. And then I kind of kicked myself in the butt because I had 35 years of no family. I mean, if I would have asked him myself, I would have been able to get it. So once we agreed to that, once we got the contract signed and everything, then came the interviews. And there was hundreds and hundreds of hours of questions. Then he took me to places, and we met people. We met his therapist, Dr. Marilyn Volker, who was a very famous sexologist, sort of like Ruth Wurstheimer. And I met a lot of transgender people. I got to learn about it. Valerie, was the person that got me to go to see him in the first place, which is a very big part of the book at the beginning. Wasn't for her being so spontaneous, I never would have gone. But I met a lot of people. I learned a lot. We did a lot of panel discussions with doctorate students, and we became not famous, but we became the darlings of the generation of trying to understand through therapists how somebody like me, a family member, can accept a sex change, because 99% of the time, a sex change tears a family apart. In our case, the sex change of my uncle brought our unhinged family back together.
So fast forward then to the point where you got together with your uncle again, you did all these interviews. How did it then become a book? You started writing, and how long did it take you?
Well, the whole book from beginning to end took me about 18, 19 years. Now, keep in mind, I had a full-time career as an insurance broker and a real estate investor. This was nothing but a hobby. I didn't know how to write, so I just wrote. And then I met friends that were writers, and they kind of helped me tweak it. I met this one woman named Nina Diamond, who was my first editor, and she, helped me quite a bit. She was very rough and tough, but she's a published author. And then the more places I went, like the Miami Book Fair, the more people I met in the industry, the more people wanted to help me. And why was because the story was so fascinating that they probably wanted to be a part of it.
Let's talk a little bit then about the story, because one of the surprises I think readers, if they choose to read this book, are going to find out is that, yes, it's about my Uncle Gloria, but it's also a lot more than just your Uncle Gloria. It's your story. Is that correct?
Yes. The story about Uncle Gloria was about 5%. Originally, I had decided the book would be about her. But after I was told, that it's not good karma to just put a book together, and try to sell it for the sake of being greedy and money, then I made it about me and how my life, I told my story, my life, and how her abandonment affected my life, and how I went, had a really tough life growing up. My mother died when I was 17. My father I never knew. My mom told me he got murdered by mobsters in L.A., so I never had a father. And we lived really poor in Miami Beach, and it was a very rough upbringing. And I had no role model. And then what turned out to be my role model and my guidance was drugs. And once I found a couple certain types of drugs, that was my role model.
And that consumed a large part of your life
Big time.
for how many years?
I was a hardcore drug addict for 22 years. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was the years before there was social media, so I didn't make a YouTube video, people videotaping me with YouTube. Had a lot of fun.
And how'd you get off it?
Ironically, I was laying in my house one day. I was about 6'1", about 110 pounds, and the last 2.5 years I was a crack addict. Didn't eat for 2.5 years, but I thought I looked great. And then one day my sister and my uncle, ironically, came into my house. They tied me down and they said, "We're going to give you a chance to get into treatment, or we're going to Baker Act you," which is nothing more than involuntary confinement in the sanitarium. And it didn't sound like a good idea, so I figured, okay, I'll go get, treatment. My idea treatment was I'll go in for 30 days, and I'll eat a lot to gain a lot of weight, come out and be a weekend crackhead. But something changed, my brain got clear, and everything about my life went from the outhouse to the penthouse.
I love that line because that describes your life.
That's the truth, yeah. I mean, I had nothing, and I started to get something, and today I have everything.
When you were into drugs, were you running a business also?
Yeah, I was, yes. Well, wait, no, I wasn't,
Insurance.
no, I wasn't in insurance. That was after I got out. No, that was after I had a stint I was incarcerated because of drugs, which is a whole nother issue about being locked up in prison and whatnot. But while I was doing drugs, I was doing menial jobs. And, because I couldn't stay straight long enough, I was like addicted. Everything to me was, I'm OCD. I'm addicted to more of this, more of that, more sex, more drugs, more rock and roll. So I became a concert promoter. I was a rock star in a rock band. I was a drummer. I was everything that the typical rock star, attitude, the long hair, just did a lot of stuff. And fortunately, I was with a woman who liked the same drugs I did. So, we had a pretty good time. But it was crack cocaine that I couldn't stay any longer. Quaaludes was my drug of choice, and that was the best.
So what got you into then? You stopped drugs at some point in time, and
Yeah.
then you started writing at that time. Were you writing at the same time?
No. It was September 24th, 1987 was my last day I got high. So I'll be 32 years clean from any mood or mind altering drug. In September will be 32 years. So what happened was when I got out of treatment, my mind was so clear. And then I started thinking of how I could improve my life. And, they taught me in AA and NA baby steps. And me, I want it now. So that was the biggest problem, patience. So every day I went to a meeting, every day I listened, I learned, and little by little I got jobs. Then I got this one job, and then, for a big company that does cellular phones. This was in the beginning. And they put me as credit manager. Managing thousands and thousands of dollars and nobody's watching me. Don't they know that I'm an addict and I could have easily siphoned money? Didn't do a thing. And then along comes this woman who, a little older than me, became my boss. Good-looking woman, name was Myrna. She's one of the few people in life that was my mentor and changed my life completely, Myrna Schweiger, and she's in the book. Anyway, she came up to me and said, "I want you to follow me. I'm leaving the company, and I'm going into the business of insurance, and you have the gift of gab. I think you can do real successful." Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is a MILF. Oh, excuse me. This is a woman who's just trying to hit on me because I'm younger, and I'm thinking, oh, this is great, Hey, just because I'm clean doesn't mean that, I have to, be cautious with women. So anyway, wasn't like that. So she taught me and mentored me about insurance, and I found out I was a real good schmoozer. And then people loved me, and people, were lining up to buy insurance, to get consultation. I learned about financial planning, and all this stuff, and I'm wondering, like, how's this going to end? And it didn't. It never has.
And one of the things, Stephen, too, that you've done, and this was fairly recently, but it's impressed me tremendously, is you fight for several things. One of them is you fight for the rights of ex-convicts. And you told me the story, I think, in Florida, a tremendous story, in terms of them getting the right to vote, even.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. I got convicted, I got sloppy in my drug dealing. Actually, I was set up in St. Augustine, Florida, and 1985, or 1983, or I don't know, early 1980s. And a long story short, I got convicted of possession, charged with trafficking, convicted of possession of Quaaludes, and I got 5 years in prison, but I did 2 years in prison, 2 years on parole, and then when I came out, I didn't learn my lesson, so I became a crackhead, and the paranoia was incredible. And then is when I went into rehab and got clean. But recently in Florida, there was a law that was trying to give rights back to convicted felons that served their sentence. Now, I got my rights back. So I was the first convicted felon in the state of Florida to get a real estate license. The first one. I was the first one in the state of Florida to get an insurance license. I got one. And I also got my rights to vote. And I did it because I was persistent. And so I started helping the amendment and the people involved to use me as a model to show that here I am, 30 years later, people are trusting me with millions of their dollars, and I never had the first question on my license, no blemish, nothing. Everybody loved me because of my knowledge.
And so the law has changed in Florida since then?
The law has changed, but Florida politics now want them to pay their fines and their court costs before they get their rights back. I have my own opinion about that, and I'm kind of leave it like that because, some people would agree and some people wouldn't. But I did a PSA, which you can find on my, I think on my Facebook website or on a website called risenews.net. Did a 4.5-minute PSA on it, and I was very clear about it.
And let's talk a little bit about something else you've done. It seems to me, Stephen, you've had like about 17 different careers and lives. It's just how you keep evolving. But you've also become now a speaker, and you talk about not only the book, but you speak about many other topics as well. How'd you get into that?
Well, I have a message. I mean, I'm a good speaker. I'm a motivational speaker. And when I was in all these meetings, a lot of people kept coming in, relapsing, and, going out and doing things. And I'm the type of person that likes to help people. And I'm kind of like hardcore about, if you want to succeed in life, do what I did, make a decision. And so simply put, what I did was people ask me, and I go and I speak, and I talk to them and tell them, this is a real serious game. I mean, I cheated death at the very least 4 times. I should have been dead at least 4 times. Because Quaaludes, so many people were dying from them, and I should have died, but I didn't. And, I had broken bones, scars, bruises, but I didn't die, and my brain didn't get messed up. So for me, to be able to give back what God's given to me, it was a blessing for me to pay it forward.
Well, let's talk about the idea of giving back in terms of 2 things you're doing. Number one, in terms of the book and the book sales and future book sales.
Yes.
That's going to, I guess, going to a foundation or organization you've set up?
Yes, thank you for asking. My passion in life is saving the lives of animals in distress. I love animals. Animals, to me, dogs, cats, horses, pigs, stuff like that. That's the most important thing in my life because they give unconditional love. So about 4 years ago, I started a 501c3 nonprofit with a friend of mine called animalcarenow.org. And what we do is several things. We're very unique in the way we manage our money, but the bottom line is that I've made a commitment that 80% of all net profits from My Uncle Gloria, from a movie, from television, from the books, whatever, gets donated into this charity for the purpose of saving the lives of animals in distress.
So if people want to get the book, and we'll come back to some of the other things you said, best bet to find out information about the book is where?
Well, you can go to Amazon.com and just go My Uncle Gloria. You can go to myunclegloria.com. Just Google My Uncle Gloria. There's plenty of places in which you can get it. Right now, it's out on hard paperback and what's the other one?
Kindle.
Kindle. There's an audio book completed, but I've gotten a little lazy about editing a mistake I made in the acknowledgments. And as soon as I do that, then it'll be out in audio, hopefully in the next week or two, and that's it. And then I'm on to the sequel and the prequel that I've already started, which people are asking me about.
Well, let's talk about that. So, in addition to finishing this book, promoting it, getting people to read it, getting people to hear about it on radio and TV elsewhere, I didn't know you'd written, kind of in the process of writing 2 other books, a prequel and a sequel. What's the thought on that?
Well, if when you look at the reviews, a lot of people, they all love it, but a lot of them were angry because I left them hanging, kind of like a cliffhanger, until next season. And they, most of them read it in one shot and were like disappointed because they weren't fulfilled.
But wait, was that an intent of yours to leave them hanging?
No. I mean, it's as a true story, as a memoir is forever green. So if I cut it off today, who knows what's going to happen next week? But there's a big twist at the end of the book, a big twist that I didn't know was coming, but it just happened to come. And a lot of people were like, what happened? What happened? We want to know, So I'm writing what happened from the time I cut it off to the present. And then another thing that I'm writing about is, since the story is from my POV point of view, a lot of them want to know about Butch/his Gloria's life, his point of view of his life. So I'm writing about that also.
So, Stephen, we have working on kind of 2 books simultaneously in the back of your mind. You also have the Animal Foundation and the other things you're going to be doing in your spare time.
Continue to buy and sell real estate, continue to keep my brain sharp. I became an exercise addict. I switched addictions, by the way. My addiction has been, for the last 21 years, exercise. I cannot stop exercising in the morning. I feel like I'm 25 years old, and it shows. I feel great. So it's a healthy addiction, and I just, that's it. I just keep going, just like you.
And in terms of addictions, if you're going to have an addiction, everybody should have such an addiction as a
well,
exercise.
I'm OCD. I mean, my addiction is animals, saving animals' lives, and continuing to work on my spirituality and my health. Even though I'm now considered a senior citizen, which just blows my mind, I'm addicted to exercise, and I feel great. It's the high that comes free, and it's the high that doesn't get me in trouble. I love it.
If people want to find out more about Stephen Shulman or about your books, let's again review a couple of things. One,
Sure.
Do you have a website yourself?
MyUncleGloria.com.
Okay, easy enough. You can find out information about not only this book, but speaking other things Stephen does as well. You can also find information about you on Amazon.
I believe so, yeah.
Well, Amazon,
Yeah.
the book, My Uncle Gloria.
Or you could go to my Facebook page. I'm not tech savvy, by the way, so I have to rely on other people telling me what to do. But if anybody wants to reach me, or anybody wants to hire me, or anybody wants me to do a talk or motivational, they can just reach me at myunclegloria.com. One of the things that I do want to do is I want to start to do some of these big, talks like TED Talks, stuff like that. I'm best with live audience, big audiences.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you, Steve Shulman, for being my guest the second half hour on the Langwell Show. Also thank my other guests, Katie Langwell and Scott Fisher, for being my guest the first half hour. Also, we hope you listen in on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. here on the new WPVM FM, and we're going to go back to regular programming right now.